Welcome. My name is Gloria Alvarez, and I will be your facilitator for the day. I would like to introduce our main presenter, Maya Iwata, VP of APIP.
Of APIP. Yes, I know. It's a long name. It's a long name. Yeah. So in addition to working for Asian American Pacific Islanders in philanthropy, I'm also a longtime Giving Circle member. And I am delighted today to be joined by two members of our National Giving Circle movement, which is Cathy Fong and Thea. And I'm just going to share a little bit about Cathy. She's been deeply steeped in racial justice, and also the Asian Mosaic Fund is based in Philadelphia. And just so delighted that she is going to be able to join us today and talk so much about the kind of the solidarity work that APIP is doing with other communities of color. And delighted to also be joined by Thea Chhun of the Iwata Circle, which specifically works with the Cambodian American community. And very excited, APIP has a long commitment to working with underrepresented groups and also less resource groups. And so often in the conversation about Asian Americans in this country, we often don't hear about Southeast Asian groups. And so I'm so delighted that you're here, Thea, to talk about that with the group. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Gloria.
Thank you so much. For our participants, please review the guidelines and share one thing that you will hold during our session in the chat. If you can just please, again, take 1 minute, review the guidelines through the link that's been placed in the chat, and just share one thing with us that you will hold during the session in the chat. Closed captioning is also available to all participants. Just click the 3 dots on the bottom of your Zoom screen and select Show Subtitles, and you will have subtitles with you throughout the session. Thank you so much, Kelly. Be present. Anyone else? Would you like to please share one thing that you will hold during the session from our community guidelines? If you have any questions, please also place them in the chat. At any moment, you can just feel free, just place your questions and we will be answering them throughout the session.
Sorry, Lori, can you be a little more specific? So we're what we're going to hold from the community guidelines?
Absolutely. Once you click on the link for the community guidelines, you will then go to our sort of community guidelines rules, and there are different ones that you might behold. Use I statements, be present, keep it confidential, self-care, just anything from there that resonates with you, you can just sort of place it in the chat.
I also just really wanted to thank people who had made their videos, shown their videos, and so we can see them, because I know how hard it is. It's been a long day already and people may be feeling a little zoomed out. So I so appreciate you, Kelly. And also, is it Julita? You're on mute, which is the other thing with Zoom. And just so appreciate all of you who are willing to turn on your videos. I know it's hard and it's a long day, so thank you.
Words matter. Yes, they do. Thank you. Michelle will soon place her video, but she is eating at the moment. We totally understand that as well, Michelle. Please feel free. Again, in addition to letting us know one thing that you will hold throughout the session from our guidelines, feel free to ask any questions. Be aware of the privilege you hold. Thank you so much for that. +1 on being present. Okay. For this session today, we will be breaking out in 2 or 3 different breakout rooms. We will each be matching in a different session with a presenter. And we have an icebreaker that we have worked on today. And the question is, if you could please share a bright spot, AKA BS moment, that you've had in your day thus far. A BS moment, once we get into the breakout rooms, if we could just share with each other what's been the bright spot of your day.
And sorry, Gloria, you want us to share those in the breakout sessions?
Yes.
Got it.
There you go. So once you've been queued to join, just press and join breakout room. And again, what's been the BS moment?
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
Hi, I've just assigned you to breakout room 1. We're just all in breakout rooms at this point, sharing some moments. So if you just click on the link, you'll be able to join breakout room 1.
Oh, okay. I don't see a link. Sorry to be late. I didn't realize it was breakout rooms and I was very confused.
No problem at all. I'll send it again, and then if that works.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Kelly. Hello.
Oh, hello.
And thank you, Mike and Rebecca and R. DuPont. Yes. Welcome, welcome. All right.
Welcome back, everyone. How was the session? Thumbs up. The breakout question? Great. Well, we're back, and now we will have Maya give us a beginner presentation for the day.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And so delighted, as I said, to be here, but also Giving Circles and Everyday Givers is also all about being real. So I don't feel like I could really begin the session without just acknowledging, taking a moment to acknowledge the compounding trauma and tragedies, whether they're the escalating anti-Asian racism and violence, the ongoing murders of Black men and boys by the police, and also the more recent mass shootings, both in Atlanta and in Indianapolis. And within all of that, while acknowledging the news tends to focus on interpersonal violence, I wanted to also lift up the structural and institutional racism as well as implicit bias. So for example, one of the things in AAPI communities that we've been dealing with for the last 2 decades is the deportation of Southeast Asians, which is a form of racial violence. And just acknowledging also that many of the conversations about immigration have really stripped away the humanity of all our communities, not just AAPI communities, and the individuals who've been impacted under these policies. So just want to acknowledge that moment. It's not the focus of today's talk, but just in being real and authentic to who we are, and following up on the presentations from this morning about humanity. Philanthropy is all about our full humanity. And so I felt it was necessary to say something. Also acknowledging that AAPIP's National Giving Circle work, we started this work to really expand the pie of philanthropy and move dollars to organizations working on the ground and activate everyday givers to make a larger collective impact. AAPIP on a whole as an organization operates from a place of abundance and works collaboratively with other communities of color, because we're really clear that more funding for AAPI communities doesn't mean less for other communities of color. We're breaking out of this scarcity model and zero-sum game, where we're looking to transform philanthropy and giving through a lens of racial and gender justice and equity. So on that, AAPIP, just to give you a little bit of background, AAPIP did a 5-year National Giving Circle campaign that created 54 giving circles across the country and raised more than $3 million from more than 5,000 donors. And that supported more than 500 plus AAPI organizations. We also did a report on it. So that can be found on AAPIP's website. So I put the link in if people wanted to see that. There's some key elements about AAPIP's giving circle model, but there's some things I just want to say. I know you're all here because you believe in everyday givers, but one of the things I really love about giving circles is that it's a great way to learn from organizations, because giving circles are so much more of a fluid and responsive kind of model of giving. It really creates so much potential. And because it's so flexible and responsive, it really draws from community and what's happening in the here and now. We don't need to have lots of research, of which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love Dr. Freeman's research from this morning, but that we don't have to wait forever to be able to respond. It also comes from a cultural ethos of supporting others and giving back to community. And I know from my own experiences as a longtime AAPIP Giving Circle member, that's actually one of the ways I really got involved with AAPIP years ago, is that giving circles are also a great way to be a bridge to organizations' first grants. Because the saying, you can't get a grant until you have one. So giving circles can really help break through that barrier. And so members also talked about what it means to host a giving circle and how to make it accessible, because each community is different. And AAPIP's giving circle model is really one about what works for that community. We didn't if you're a giving circle that's part of AAPIP's network, you have to do your giving circle in a certain way. No, it wasn't. So because of that, as you can see by my third point, we had openness to all kinds of different models of structure and funding models. Some people did fundraisers, other people got all of the money they raised, did collective giving through their member dues. And people did everything from, families voting together as one vote, to people, issuing an RFP and just making a simpler application to a bunch of friends who normally gather together, deciding they want to pull their funding together and just cut some checks directly to the organizations. We also believe in the power of network, that bringing together giving circles, regardless of size or amount of money, is about building community together and learning from each other, and also responding to the needs in the community and kind of thinking together about things. You'll also see that social justice, community empowerment, and giving are really essential parts of not only AAPIP's giving circle, but essential elements of civic engagement. as communities of color, we know that civic engagement does not begin and end at the ballot box, although don't get me wrong, very, very important to vote, but it's not about that. It's not just about that. And that giving circles are part of this bigger ecosystem of having civic engagement. And then I will close with just a lesson across issue and race and ethnicity of giving circles. I've been part of different giving circle networks and communicating outside of the AAPIP network as well. And we find that traditional philanthropy and fiscal hosts of giving circles really need to get beyond the transactional and really see circles as a resource to inform their giving as well as their understanding of the issues that are based on the community and on the ground. So without further ado, I'm delighted to be able to move to talk to both Cathy, Fong, and Thea. We're going to start with Cathy. And as you can see, there's a little description about the Asian Mosaic Fund, which is a diverse group of multi-generational supporters. And what they're really doing in terms of racial solidarity is something that's very exciting. And I already had spoken about Thea's group, the Devata Circle, which is really focusing on the Cambodian American community. And I love that their tagline is from surviving to thriving, because that is what it's about. And Cathy, I'm going to turn it over to you and just let me know when you'd like me to advance the slide.
Okay, will do. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Cathy Fong, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Asian Mosaic Fund. Super excited to be here with you today and to share our work, and really excited that the Gates Foundation is really elevating BIPOC giving today. Just to give you some background information about the Asian Mosaic Fund, we're an all volunteer-led organization based in the Philadelphia area, led by a core group of about 10 volunteer steering committee members who both fundraise and administer the grants. We were founded in 2010 as a response to the historic and continued under-resourcing of AAPI communities, as with other communities of color. This under-resourcing due to structural barriers. So our work has always been undergirded by racial equity, racial justice, and the idea that everyone can be a philanthropist. You don't have to work at a large foundation. So when the pandemic hit last year, like with many organizations, it really threw a wrench into our work. But in moments of crisis, it's really critical that we all lean into this work and really lean on each other. So as I had mentioned, the under-resourcing, AAPI specifically, and this is a new report that AAPIP National actually released a few weeks ago that highlights this. For every $100 granted out nationally, AAPI communities only receive 20 cents of that. And this is a stat that has remained stagnant since 1992. So there's that. And then we had also observed in the Philly area, observed and experienced a regional discrepancy during the pandemic last year. And then you have the series of horrible murders of Black lives perpetrated by the police against this larger backdrop of COVID-19. And all this to say, like, it made our work even more urgent. So what do we do? One of the first things that we did was team up with our AAPIP Philly chapter leaders pretty early on, working with them every week. They really worked to expand our capacity and expand our strategic thinking, and really helped us fine tune our ideas. And then prior to the pandemic, the vast majority of our fundraising was done at in-person events. And so we really had to pivot our approach to the work. And despite AAPIs being the fastest growing racial group in the US, AAPIs have experienced a really long history of largely being excluded from larger white dominant narratives. And with that historic invisibility in mind, it became very abundantly clear to us that we don't exist during a pandemic unless we have a strong digital presence. And if we don't exist as an organization, then we're going to be really challenged to shift resources into our communities. So we rebooted some very inactive, dormant social media accounts. so that we could crowdfund in the digital space. And because of the pandemic last year, a lot of national funding opportunities opened up to us, and we applied for and were able to receive grants that were not previously available to us. And then we decided to also do a needs assessment of our nonprofit partners and ask them, how are you pivoting in your work and how best can we support you right now? And the common denominator to their responses was, we need money. So working in partnership with the people in the organizations on the ground and closest with the communities who are most impacted, we decided to convene an ad hoc grants committee to move the money out as quickly as we can. The committee was composed of representatives from different AAPI nonprofits in the area. They vetted the applications, acted as a collective expert on community needs in the region, and ultimately decided how the funds should be allocated. Next slide. And so what happened? So we were able to raise enough funds to distribute $40,000 across 11 community-based organizations, specifically led by and serving people of color. And in response to the racial awakening last year, we decided to allocate 25% of those funds to giving priorities identified by one of our local partners, the Philadelphia Black Giving Circle. They identified 2 Black mental health nonprofits that we gave a combined $10,000 to. And we did this because we see solidarity and allyship as action words. It's like, I don't throw those words around lightly. If I say it, I'm going to do something about it. And I also really love what Susan Taylor Batten had said earlier today during the plenary session about how giving is a form of social activism. And, you know, even though that's not what we called it last year, that's definitely the theme here, right? And so we were able to distribute $40,000 across 2 nonprofits that work across a range of populations and cultures and heritages. In terms of the AAPI communities in the Philly area, we were able to support Cambodian and Khmer, Indonesian, Korean, Vietnamese, Karen, which is an ethnic group in Myanmar/Burma and Thailand and other countries, Bangladeshis, more broadly South Asian, West Asian, and Arabs. And then one of the nonprofits that we gave money to is a nonprofit that works with both Black Muslim populations and Asian Muslim populations. And then out of the 25%, that went to Black folks more broadly. And so what should you be taking away from all of this? So Asian Mosaic Fund was able to do the work that we did last year because our work is built on long-term, authentic relationships. The decision-making was community-centered, and when you do community-centered decision-making, you have community-centered outcomes. And so like the needs assessment that we distributed, our nonprofit partners didn't have to fill out the survey. No one likes to fill out a survey, but they did it because they knew that we would listen and that we would take action on it. And to make it even easier on our nonprofit partners, we use that needs assessment as their grant application, should they so choose. And a couple of the grantees did decide to go that route instead of filling out another form. The other takeaway from our experience last year is that you really need to be flexible in order to be responsive. Last year was an opportunity to do things differently and to be really nimble. And had we gone through the normal voting process among the Giving Circle members, it would have taken several weeks to decide on how that money should be allocated. But because we opted to convene an ad hoc decision-making body, we were able to decide on grant awards on a Saturday morning and then start wiring money that coming week. And then finally, and I'm so glad this was like touched on earlier today, we approach our work with an abundance mindset, despite the structures in place promoting a scarcity mindset. You know, the tax system allows private foundations to hold on to 95% of their endowments year after year, leaving a very small 5% for nonprofits to fight over. And we're not here to fight. We're here to lift each other up. And that was what drove our work last year. You know, we could have held on to the entire 40,000 that we had raised, but that isn't right. And we didn't do it. And you know, we wanted to act in solidarity with our communities, and we did it the best way that we knew how, which was through giving. And then last slide, this is who the money went to last year. Please take a moment to Google them. They're all amazing organizations. Out of the AAPI orgs that applied, almost everyone got funding of some sort. Because the decision-making body that we convened, these ears and eyes and feet on the ground, they understood the collective need and wanted to make sure that everyone got a slice of that pie. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. And I think what we heard also from today's plenary and what we know about communities of color is that it's about relationship. And so I love that the grantees were identified by the Philadelphia Black Giving Circle, right? It's because we have relationships, so there's trust, and we build and we support each other. So thank you, Cathy. And on that note, I'm going to pivot a little bit to Thea. Can you share about the Iwata Giving Circle and just let me know when I should advance the slides?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for presenting first. I think that a lot of what Cathy was saying, I really love to piggyback on, because that's our strategy for this 2020 giving cycle was different, because we wanted really to pivot to what our community was telling us. And so I think I just wanted to start a little bit about an introduction to our giving circle and kind of our name. And so as you read this quote by one of our honorees from our International Women's Day event, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how we got started. And so really it was because as Cambodian American women, we're often caregivers in our community. And so you'll often see our aunties and our grandmothers being the linchpins that keeps our Buddhist temples going and our communities going. And so our original founders, Navin Mal and Chibi Sok, were friends, and they really conceived of the idea of creating a giving circle that really was an extension of our everyday community giving, with also recognition that Cambodian American women are often unspoken leaders in our community, and we really believe that community can't grow without the leadership of women. And this is kind of the homegrown concept that really started this giving circle. So I think next slide. And so as Cathy was saying, we really pivoted this year in really listening to the community needs during the pandemic. And so I think what was really great is that we have really deep relationships with our giving organizations, with our partnership organizations. And so we were hearing a lot about what the community was needing during this pandemic. You know, a lot of people had lost their jobs. A lot of people were having the burden of funeral costs that they really couldn't afford. And so we decided that instead of what we normally do, which is giving to organizations that are supporting the leadership of Cambodian women and girls, that we were really wanting to give directly to individuals and families that were impacted by the pandemic, with the support of our partners. And so we had never done this before, and so it was new for us as well. I think we really had to pivot to a remote model that we hadn't used before, which was a campaign, a mutual aid campaign through Facebook. And I think what's great about building communities, we've started in 2010, so we built these communities, is that we have donors that that pivot with us. And so I think that what really made it successful was the understanding of community, of wanting to give back to community. And so we had donors who supported us in the past who were willing to support us now as we pivoted for this past year. And so we really exceeded our expectations, which is something that's always wonderful to hear about. And so we had actually doubled our original goal of $10,000 to $15,000, and we actually raised over $30,000 in I think a little bit over 6 weeks, which was a lot for us even to conceive about. And so I think that was one of the lessons we learned, was the power of community giving. And I think this model of abundance, and the fact that with small dollars that you could raise this amount of money within the community for the community. And I think that we also had embraced one-time funding opportunities through AAPIP's COVID-19 mini grants as well, which also gave additional dollars to our community organizations to address anti-Asian hate. And so I think that really part of this is the connections that we build, not only with AAPIP, but with other organizations and other communities, and really pivoting together to address the fact that our BIPOC communities are suffering and impacted disproportionate to the general population, and really wanting to pivot and really, I think, really address and listen to and be part of the movement of what we were seeing in the communities. And so I think that this campaign, Maya, would you go back?
Go back.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like Cathy was saying, we really realized that in order to have more of a presence, especially having to pivot to mostly an online presence, that we really had to update our website and our Facebook page. And so I think with our first campaign, we really found that to be a creative way to fundraise for us. And so with our 10-year anniversary, we actually had to postpone it because it usually our annual event that we do every year is around International Women's Day, where we recognize women leaders in our community. And so we had to postpone that last year. And so we kind of thought about what a creative way we could do that this year to kind of celebrate our 10-year anniversary, which is why we kicked off a 3-month-long fundraising campaign that started back in March, and mostly through Facebook. And every month we have different events. And so we've gone back to the community, and we've done live stream fireside chats with our community leaders. And we also really wanted to spotlight Cambodian American women who were essential workers, who were working on the front lines during this pandemic as well. And so I think that we were able to recognize and really be creative in how we were highlighting these amazing women. Next slide. And so with the $30,000 that we had raised during this mutual aid campaign, we had split it among these 5 community organizations. And so like Cathy was saying, please, maybe take a picture if you want to save it to look for later, because there's so much good work being done by other communities. And I think that was our model, was that we didn't want to start a nonprofit, and we wanted to support organizations that were already doing wonderful work. And we just wanted to support them in whatever way that we could through these small donations. And so for the mutual aid campaign, we split it among the Asian Prisoner Support Committee, the Center for Empowering Refugees and Immigrants, Khmer Girls in Action, Mekong in New York City, and the United Cambodian Community of Long Beach. And I think this is a recognition that we were originally locally concentrated, and as we've grown our organization, we've also been able to give nationally as well, and kind of recognize all the amazing work that's being done on a national level. And I think that was it.
And thank you so much, Cathy and Thea. I know that when I first got this, I'm like, we have to keep it short, just 5 minutes. So I am so deeply appreciative to you all. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Gloria, so you can let us know about if there are any questions that we should address in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Maya, Cathy, and Thea. We will now host a Q&A. If there are any questions, please place them in the chat and the panel will address them. Again, if there are any questions in terms of the presenters and the information that's just shared, please place it in the chat and the panel will be answering your questions.